the changing and making sure that the business ideas that you come up with are sustainable. That leads us now to our conversation for this afternoon, and we want to look at Kenya's labor market, the changing demographic of consumers, and the effect that has on companies' bottom lines in terms of what consumers are purchasing. This afternoon, I'm joined by Eva Murray, who is the CEO and founder of BSD. Welcome to the program, Eva.
Thank you very much.
And next to her, we have Koi Kariuki, who is the head of research at Ipsos. Koi, welcome to KTN.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's get this conversation on the road now. One of the things that I want you to help me understand is from the research that you have been doing about on the market and the different consumer trends that have been going on. What are you seeing with this changing demographic and the changing consumers?
Maybe it might be a good thing for us to inform our audiences what the research you're referring to is.
Yeah.
So next week on Tuesday, the 21st of March, BSD Group, which is a business and brand advisory and communications consultancy in partnership with Ipsos, which is the third world's largest market research company, will be unveiling the third study that is dubbed the top 100 most loved brands by women in Kenya.
Yeah.
So the third study. And in there, the voice of Kenyan women consumers has been captured, her psyche, the demographic that she represents. We've spoken with women across Kenya, ranging ages from 18 to 70, and they have taken their voices and brought them to the room.
Yeah.
Over different products and brands and experiences. So that's really what we're referring to. But perhaps my colleague Koi can now begin to respond to this question that you asked.
Yes, and of course, the other thing that Koi, maybe you can help us understand.
Sure.
Maybe, I know you cannot go into the details of the report yet until it comes out. Maybe you can help us understand how much time did you take just to prepare this report?
Well, I mean, the study is, as Eva mentioned, it's a national study. So we spend a lot of time, possibly about a week to 2 weeks in the field, speaking to women across all the counties. When we come back, put together a report, it probably takes us about 3 to 4 weeks, to be honest, for us to actually look through the data, synthesize it. And one of the things that we feel is quite important for people to know about the study is that we are not asking women to choose from a list of items or brands they love. They tell us spontaneously. So we have to really bind through that to get the key insights.
All right, and again, Koi, allow me to take you back now. When you look at some of the results that you got, and when you look at the difference between different sets of consumers, what would you say stood out for you during this research?
I mean, we started this research 3 years ago now, and a lot of the time we think of brands that are big to be a very traditional brands. What has really stood out for us is that women are very discerning. They are looking at brands that work for them. They're looking at brands that are affordable, accessible, good quality, and can be backed by their peers. So that could be a brand as small as, a neighborhood shop. It could be a brand as big as Safaricom. And for them, they're looking at them on an equal playing field in terms of brand love.
Yeah.
So that's something that we don't actually really know. I've really known about the female consumer and been able to put into data.
All right, and Eva, let me bring you into this conversation now. Of course, women are known to be the biggest spenders, from shoes to clothes to makeup. They drive markets. Now, from what you have seen, of course, this demographic has been changing over years. Now, I'm sure different generations have different priorities. What do you see as the current priorities for the new consumers?
Okay, so you've asked a multi question there, and a good question. The first is to go back to what you inferred. Big spenders, absolutely. In a research that Koi and I are familiar with, courtesy of McKinsey, they estimate that by 2025, globally, women consumption will be controlling perhaps $15 trillion. Now, that's not something to just push off the shelf. If we have that possibility, all things being equal, that women have accessibility to their preferred brands, they can afford them, they have been capacitated to afford them, that these are brands that they can trust and depend, that their peers perhaps are giving good reference. $15 trillion globally is something that we should all wake up and smell the coffee about. But what is interesting, based on your other part of the question, is that there are emerging voices that we need to take good note of. Women are driving tech usability. That's some of what has come up as surprising. Up to 45% of those who have access to a phone actually own a smartphone in Kenya. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
You'll find that a lot of our women, up to probably more than 40%, are enjoying e-commerce experiences. So trends that were probably not real for us 5-10 years ago, something is beginning to shift.
All right, now again, when you look at the different demographics of women, we're talking urban women, we're talking women in the rural setup.
Yes.
I know their priorities in terms of spending are completely different. Maybe you can help us understand, Koi, from what you found, and Eva, from maybe your understanding of this market and these demographics, what do you make of it?
Gonna go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start. So I think when we look at women in urban areas, rural areas, reaching them, I'll just start with that, is becoming almost equally as easy, whether it's through TV, whether it's through radio. It's almost equally easy to access them, at least through communication. Now, in terms of how they spend, a lot of the spend is more determined by their work status, by their socioeconomic class, by their income, and also by their mother status. That's where we're seeing the differences. Depending on where you fall on, especially those three pillars, it will determine how much you're able to spend and how much you're playing a role in the decision making when it comes to purchasing goods and services. Not just tangible, but also, banks, insurance, all those things.
All right, now, Eva, I know when you look at some of these researches and when you look at some of the products that companies are coming up with, they're mostly tailored towards women, and some of them actually, and I know it's debatable.
It's debatable.
I know it's debatable.
The science is telling us different.
Yes. Now, when you look at the Kenyan consumer and the Kenyan woman consumption, how best can we then make sure that we empower them to grow, to play a part in helping grow back the economy?
Okay, so I think that's a really good question. Our boardrooms, our policy makers, our investment decisions, where we're investing in business, needs to own this science and say, unless our product, our service, or our cause includes women's voices in understanding distribution, in understanding their preference over marketing and communication in terms of product formulation, then it's not good to go. Because the argument of even introducing this study was that the woman voice has for too long been ignored, omitted, underrepresented, misrepresented, and the effort that our study is now bringing to the fore is that hold your horses. Has her voice informed the business strategy in terms of distribution? Has her voice been included in how you will communicate? How you will amplify, how you will drive imagery. Take, for example, the statistic of last year's study that shows us that up to 50% of our households in Kenya are now single mother-led. What does that mean for our communication? Isn't that a staggering statistic, that single mothers are now nearly in the majority of leading households in Kenya? So you see, that science should then guide, therefore, how do we make her time poverty become better utilized? The utility of her time, the utility on her time online, the utility of her time out of home, etc., etc. So this is what I would say is necessary for us in terms of brand ownership, business ownership, policy making, investing paradigms to take into consideration.
All right, and I know we cannot go without talking about the gender gap, and we're talking that covers issues with regards to reference to merit, salary, in terms of earning. That is a huge conversation, globally.
It is.
Now, I want you to help me understand, and maybe from your research and from your past works, when you look at the women consumers and the brands they associate with, what is it about these brands that they are getting right?
That they're getting right.
Yes.
Well, one thing I think is understanding basically what's important to her, communicating with her in a way that resonates with her, and is in a very simple manner. So I'll take an example. As I mentioned, a lot of the brands that are doing very well are brands that women are able to trust. They're affordable, they're accessible, and there's brands that their peers have also been used, so the family, friends, etc. Now, brands that are able to tick on that box, and when they communicate with peers or people who they can recognize. That is celebrities, brand mascots that are established by brands that they can recognize and build affinity. We've seen over the past couple of waves, brands leap because they're ticking on these few aspects.
All right.
And in fact, also, maybe if I can throw one in there, brands that are conscious at a community level, that are transforming the experience of a woman in her neighborhood, in her community, in her society, seem to have preference in terms of preference and love. But I also want to speak around the gender gap that you have spoken about. In my other life, I serve on the board of KEPSA, the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, as the director for gender and SMEs. And last year, KEPSA launched a gender mainstreaming policy, which we intended for private sector to be better sensitized on this whole issue of gender. So demystifying it, socializing it, helping businesses to understand there's a win-win in creating parity around genders. And so as we celebrate the International Women's Month, it's important for us to bring back to this table some of the conversations around inequity, so that we are embracing equity by saying we are stronger organizations, we are stronger companies, we are stronger profit centers when we recognize that equal pay, fair pay, just engagement is good for ultimately the organization.
All right, now I understand we might be running out of time. Can you believe it? Already 50 hours.
Oh my Lord.
Our time is running out.
Don't we have an extra hour?
No, so before we wind up, I want to get your thoughts. When you look at some of the brands that women are completely disassociating with, what is it about them that they really do not want anything to do with it? And also, what should we expect about when it comes to the top 100 MLB's third edition? Koi, I will start with you.
All right, so you're saying brands that are not doing well, what are they missing the mark on? One is possibly just using trends that are not relevant to Kenyans. They're just going with a global trend. They're saying, hey, here's our brand, we're big, love us for who we are. Two, is your brand present in her life? If it's not present in her life and not necessarily something that she's using, then it's hard for her to even notice it and to be able to engage with it. I'll ask Eva.
So very quickly, next week, Tuesday, we reveal Kenya's top 100 most loved brands by women in Kenya. Kenyans queue up and find who has done the best. www.top100brands.africa, www.top100brands.africa will be where you will find your information. But more importantly, don't make any business decision without buying a copy of the study, because it will inform and strengthen whatever your business strategy, especially in a post-COVID business environment. Thank you, Jimmy.
Ladies, thank you so much for making time for us. And on that note, that is how we wrap up this edition of KTN Business Today. Thank you for keeping me company. Mbiu ya KTN is up next.